This narrative delves into two profoundly moving accounts of hardship, endurance, and a quest for a better existence amidst daunting obstacles. Each story reveals the resilience of individuals confronting their own struggles while striving to reshape their lives. A few years after graduating college, I found myself working as an analyst at a rather small private equity firm. The CEO was one of the most unscrupulous people I had ever encountered. Though he was still in his early 40s and quite young, he was a multi-millionaire driven solely by money. His business ethics were non-existent. He would do anything to get an advantage in a deal, regardless of who suffered. I witnessed him treat contractors and employees poorly, even betraying a longtime family friend without remorse. Because the firm was small, with only about 20 people in the office and many others working remotely, I naturally took on additional roles beyond my analyst responsibilities. Being one of the few with any tech knowledge, I became the de facto tech support for the office. Despite being underqualified, I ended up handling minor tech issues like setting up servers, fixing laptops, answering basic questions like how to convert files to PDFs, and even dealing with network security. Honestly, most of what I did was just improvising and Googling solutions, but over time I became genuinely proficient. They trusted me with bigger projects like planning computer systems and supervising installations, though none of this extra work came with additional pay. After a couple of years, I was worn down. I hated my job, my boss's toxic attitude, and the long hours, often 12 to 14 hours a day without overtime or performance bonuses. Being stuck in a cubicle and pigeonholed as the office tech guy left me depressed. Frustrated, I decided it was time to break free from a grind and start my own consulting business. But instead of quitting outright, I chose to build my client base on the side while still maintaining my steady paycheck. I launched my company discreetly and landed a few initial clients. As my consulting work grew, I began spending more and more time on it during office hours. At first, I kept a low profile, but eventually it became obvious. In such a small company, I was the only person who knew how to handle crucial tasks and operate key internal systems. I could easily claim a project would take a week when I finished it in minutes. Soon, 80% of my workday was devoted to my side business. I even took client calls on my desk. The rest of my time, you could find me browsing Reddit or similar distractions. We had monitoring systems for network activity, but since I was responsible for overseeing those, I had free rein. As my business flourished, I stopped caring about my office job entirely. I began showing up late, first by 30 minutes, then by an hour. My boss never reprimanded me, and I realized how indispensable I had become. I fully exploited this by arriving around noon, working a couple of hours, then heading home. My coworkers noticed but stayed quiet, disliking the company themselves. Eventually, my boss mentioned my tardiness, but after a brief correction, I returned to my late arrivals without consequence. Even after more than 2 months of arriving several hours late and openly working on my own business during work hours, I hadn't been fired. I honestly thought my dismissal was inevitable. Out of curiosity, I checked the CEO's personal email account. He had given me the password to help set up his email, looking for any mention of me. I found a recent email chain between the CEO, my direct boss, and others discussing my performance. The final message proposed terminating me within 2 days. Not surprised, but unwilling to be fired, I devised a plan. The next day, I requested a meeting with the CEO to address my performance. I confessed that I knew I had been a poor employee and that I suspected I was about to be fired. His shocked expression was priceless, as if I had psychic abilities. I told him I was an entrepreneur at heart and wanted to start my own company, but acknowledged my responsibilities at the firm. I detailed all the critical projects I was handling, making it clear how much trouble they would be in without me. Then, I proposed a deal. Rather than firing me, allow me to continue for a month to finish my projects and train a replacement. After that, I come in once a week until everything was wrapped up. Finally, we could transition to an hourly, project-based consulting relationship if they still needed me. I even hinted at quitting to make it seem like a negotiation win for them, though I actually held the leverage. After a moment's thought, the CEO agreed. Not only did I avoid termination, but I transformed my old employer into a paying client. During that last month, I continued working as I pleased while training my replacement. Once the month ended, they regularly hired me for remote tasks, pay me triple the salary I had earned on staff. After building a robust client base, I finally cut ties completely. Even 5 years later, the CEO calls me for advice, though I usually decline, telling him I'm too busy. This story might sound unbelievable, so to clarify, it was a very small company where employees wore many hats and often lacked knowledge about proper network security. I was not a computer genius, but a reasonably skilled millennial learning on the job and managing basic tech tasks myself while outsourcing complex jobs. My consulting business, by the way, has nothing to do with private equity. It's marketing related, and I didn't poach any clients from my old employer. I admit I was unprofessional, but the toxic atmosphere and poor leadership gave me little motivation. Although snooping in emails isn't something I condone, the CEO shared passwords with me freely, and given the circumstances, I felt justified to prepare for my inevitable firing. Ultimately, this journey led me away from a miserable job toward the freedom of entrepreneurship, and it's one I'm thankful for every day. My son was born prematurely at 28 weeks and survived only 11 days. He clung to life in a tiny incubator in the NICU, surrounded by machines and nurses who tried to comfort him when I couldn't. I was with him every hour I was allowed, watching his tiny chest struggle to rise and fall, his little fingers flex and curl like he was reaching for something unseen. When he passed away, a part of me went with him. But what tears me apart most is not just the loss, but the complex relief I feel. It's not because I didn't want him. I wanted him badly and still do, but because I'm relieved he never had to live with a man who would have been his father. The pregnancy had been a nightmare almost from the start. I found out I was pregnant around 9 weeks in, just after we had gotten engaged. I thought I was beginning a new life with someone who, despite being intense and complicated, truly loved me. But everything unraveled soon after. At about 10 weeks, I discovered that the man I was going to marry had committed murder. He never told me directly at first. It came out gradually, like something rotting from the inside. I noticed his paranoia, panicking at unfamiliar cars parked near our apartment, and his silence about his past life. At first, I believed he was simply seeking a fresh start, a new job in a new city. The truth was far darker. One night, drunk and sobbing, he confessed everything. He admitted to having killed someone in cold blood in a city 2.5 hours away. His friend had taken the fall and was in prison right now. In his place, he showed me police reports, mugshots, even messages they still exchanged. I froze. Here I was, carrying his child, standing on a suddenly crumbling floor. The worst part was a family weekend at his aunt's farm. Unbeknownst to me at the time, he buried the murder weapon there, where we ate dinner, laughed, and played games. Things grew violent soon after. Perhaps they had been before, but he became cruel once I knew the truth, as if keeping me scared was what kept me silent. I was shoved, slapped, screamed at, even chased and pinned against walls. I spent most of my pregnancy crying and apologizing, not to him, but to our unborn son, whispering apologies for being scared, for not being stronger, for bringing him into a world with such a father. At 17 weeks, my water broke. The doctors were grim. Without amniotic fluid, survival was unlikely. Yet my baby held on week after week until 28 weeks, a miracle in itself. When my son was born, he was so tiny and fragile, unable even to cry. They rushed him away before I could hold him. I spent the next 11 days by his incubator, reading to him, singing lullabies through tears, watching every monitor flicker, willing him to stay. Meanwhile, his father tormented me even in the hospital. He tried to force his way into my room multiple times, yelling and cursing. The day before the doctors told me my son probably wouldn't survive, that man looked me dead in the eye and said he hoped our baby would die. And he did. There are no words to describe burying your child. The silence that follows a life that barely began is unbearable. Still, somewhere deep inside, I feel grateful that my son didn't have to suffer, that he never had to endure life with that man. That man, a person who has taken two sons in two different ways, one through murder, one through trauma. When I imagine what life would have been like had my son survived, I'm terrified. The custody battles, the fear, the visits to a man who whispered hatred beside me in that hospital room, the man who buried a murder weapon in a house we shared. I love my son with every fiber of my being, but I also know the truth. This might have been mercy. It's a terrible, heart-wrenching truth to say, but it's mine. There is no justice. His father walks free while my son is gone. If I could say one thing to my boy, it would be this: I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. You deserve better. I should have been stronger, seen it coming sooner, and shielded you from him. But I loved you. I still do. And somehow, I hope you never felt the fear I carried. I hope your time here, brief as it was peaceful, and that the nurses' gentle voices made you feel safe. Every day, I wish I could hold you once more, just you and me, without the machines, without the noise. My sweet little boy, I hope you know how deeply you're loved. I wish I could have done more. The aftermath of trauma, when a devastating event shook their family to its core. It left an indelible mark, not only on the parents, but most profoundly on their first daughter. At just 14 years old, her world was upended, her childhood shattered by trauma that no amount of love or counseling could fully heal. Despite their best efforts, the light in her eyes dimmed, replaced by a coldness and emotional withdrawal that created an almost impenetrable barrier between her and those who cared for her deeply. In their desperate bid to protect her, her parents made the tough decision to homeschool her. Her attendance at school was erratic, interrupted by persistent night terrors that robbed her of peaceful sleep. Though it was perhaps an overprotective step, it was driven by a simple desire to shield their daughter from further harm, to offer a sanctuary when the outside world no longer felt safe. However, the pain did not relent. The family soon discovered that their daughter was pregnant with her attacker's child. Faced with an impossible choice, they gently urged her toward termination, but she chose to keep the baby. Supporting her decision, her parents promised to raise the child as her sibling, a pact forged partly from fear of social judgment and partly from a hope to preserve some fragment of normalcy in their fractured lives. For a time, this arrangement brought some hope. Their daughter was able to experience motherhood while still maintaining a semblance of teenage life. But cracks soon reemerged as her mental health rapidly declined. Suicidal thoughts haunted her. Attempts to bridge the growing void only pushed her further away. Hospitalizations punctuated a harrowing spiral, until one tragic night, she succeeded in ending her pain, leaving a family broken beyond words. Their grief was compounded by bitter confusion and misplaced blame. Initially, anger and denial led them to resent the baby, the living reminder of what was lost. But with time and painful reflection, they accepted the true fault lay with themselves and the circumstances, not the innocent child. Determined to honor their daughter's memory, they poured love and resources into raising their granddaughter, the child who brought both sorrow and hope. Lavishing her with opportunities and affection, they sought to provide all she deserved: concerts, holidays, private education, a chance at a future their daughter never had. Yet their hearts remain heavy with a secret they carry. This young girl, so full of life and love, remains unaware that her parents are actually her grandparents. The truth of her origins is hidden to spare her the pain of the past, to protect her fragile spirit from the shadow of loss and trauma that still lingers. Every "I love you" from her lips is a bittersweet dagger, full of love, but a reminder of the veil that separates them from the truth. They wrestle with the moral weight of this deception, torn between the fear of hurting her and the hope that this shield will keep her safe. Haunted by the memory of the daughter they lost, they fear the power of truth to fracture what little happiness remains. In the quiet moments, it is only with each other that they find solace, united in a silent understanding of their pain, carrying a burden that feels unimaginable to share with anyone else. This is a story of profound sorrow and the complex ways a family tries to survive, love, and protect in the wake of tragedy. The final chapter reveals a profound and painful reality: a child born from trauma, carrying the invisible weight of unresolved emotional pain. The parents now face the daunting responsibility of raising their granddaughter, who believes them to be her actual parents. This delicate situation brings with it the heavy burden of their family history, as they wrestle with the societal implications of concealment and protectiveness. They live with the haunting consequences of decisions made in the name of shielding their granddaughter from a painful truth. The fear that revealing the reality might shatter her fragile world, or, worse, trigger a cycle of suffering that has already claimed so much hangs over them constantly. Despite their love and the desire to protect, they are caught in an agonizing dilemma between honesty and preservation, truth and mercy. Their story is a testament to the complexity of love, loss, and the desperate yearning to prevent history from repeating itself. Through the intertwined journeys shared here, we experience the profound complexity of human resilience amid unimaginable hardship. From a young analyst's strategic pursuit of freedom beyond an oppressive work environment, to a mother's heart-wrenching encounter with loss, betrayal, and complicated love, each narrative reveals the fragile yet enduring strength of the human spirit. Further, the lasting impact of trauma reverberates through a family's struggle to care for their daughter and granddaughter, confronting painful truths and the protective burdens of secrecy. Together, these stories illuminate the delicate balance between vulnerability and determination, showing how individuals navigate their past, choices, and relationships in the face of adversity. If these deeply personal stories of struggle and resilience moved you, please consider subscribing, liking, commenting, or sharing them with others who might find comfort and insight within these narratives. Your support helps bring awareness to the complex realities of human experience and the strength it takes to overcome adversity.